We bring these programs to you monthly, sometimes bi-monthly, along with a big group of volunteers that are here tonight. It does take a big team to make all of this happen. And we'd like to welcome you to our July Backyard Association meeting. And one thing that we do want to mention, please check your phones. Make sure your phones are silenced, please. We'd appreciate it. And then we'd like to ask if anyone is here for your first time. We've got a little, oh, that's awesome. Awesome. Well, I hope we have enough folders. If not, we'll get them for you. Just keep your hands raised, please. Carol's got some information about extension.
Wow.
And what extension's all about. And what extension can help you with and offer. We're all about community outreach. We're the volunteers with extension, but we do have a full working staff here Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Do not hesitate to call extension for any type of help you need that we can help you with. And hopefully you had a few minutes to sort of look at our PowerPoint. We've got some things here that are happening within the community. Of course, we've got Linda tonight. We talk about Welcome to the Backyard Association. We've got the nature, if you've not been here before, we have a nature trail. This is all part of being a citizen of Coweta County. You don't even have to be a local resident to enjoy these amenities we have here on the fairgrounds property. We have a nature trail right behind us. We have a demonstration garden up on the hill, just down this road here towards the fairgrounds. Please take a moment sometime. They're open all during the week, sometimes on the weekend, to check those out. They're all super educational. We have a lot of supporters here for our backyard with bringing in the door prizes I mentioned. And here's all the information, the phone number. We were talking about a phone number. This is who you need to call here when you had some questions about your backyard. So just please know your extension is here to help you. So we're just going to, so we got everybody first time? You got your gift? Okay.
Now, can you turn it up a little bit?
Well, I'm not talking, so it's okay. I mean, I'm not doing the program. I'm almost done it. I don't think I can turn this up. We want to go ahead and introduce our speaker, Linda May. Several of us met Linda in Columbus in March. She was there part of a naturalist symposium, I believe. Mm-hmm. This may not be working, I'm sorry. And she had a wonderful program, and we're very lucky that she has brought one of her programs here for us tonight. I know that you are all going to be just thrilled about it. And I'll just go ahead and introduce Linda. She's an outreach coordinator for the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, Wildlife Resources Division, better known as the Georgia DNR. She's been promoting wildlife conservation for over 28 years. Linda teaches diverse audiences about our state's amazing wildlife, as well as the trees and plants that make up our habitats. She primarily fosters awareness of and appreciation for non-game wildlife. The 95% of the creatures in Georgia that are not fished for, hunted for, or trapped. Wildlife like bats, frogs, turtles, snakes, and songbirds play important ecological roles as well as bring us delight. Through environmental education, Linda empowers others to help conserve Georgia's rare species and keep common species common. We welcome Linda May.
Thanks. Thank you. Thank you all for coming on a Tuesday night. This is a really nice crowd. You must be critter lovers. Anybody love critters here? I mean, who doesn't, right? But yeah, so we're going to talk a lot about wildlife in Georgia. We're going to start kind of with an overview and then kind of narrow down into what you can do on your property to help larger efforts for wildlife conservation. And of course, that does relate to backyard habitats. But a lot of people aren't real familiar with their state government agency that manages wildlife or natural resources for that matter. So I wanted to, I don't even know where I'm supposed to point this. Hey, it works. Want to just give an overview of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources, otherwise known as Georgia DNR. And so that is kind of the overarching department is Georgia DNR, but then we have 5 divisions underneath that, and they all have their own specialties. Can y'all hear me okay in the back? Yes. Okay, good. So you've probably heard on the news if there's a sewage spill or some sort of pollution, you'll hear them say something about the Georgia EPD, Environmental Protection Division, so they manage kind of the health of the air and the land and the water. Law Enforcement Division, that's who people a lot of times typically think of with Georgia DNR. That's the game warden. Law enforcement used to be housed under Wildlife Resources, which is who I work for, but they are big enough now they have their separate division. Coastal Resources, they manage marine fisheries and the health of the coastline. And then how many of you have been to a state park or historic sites? Lots of you. Those are great places to get out in nature. And as I mentioned, I'm with the Wildlife Resources Division. So I work with a lot of cool biologists that work with every kind of creature you can probably imagine. So I've been with them for almost 29 years, and it just does not even feel like that. This does not feel like work right here. But yeah, so it's a really fun agency to work for. If some of you younger folks in the audience, if you're looking for career ideas, I do have a brochure over there on that. But you can go to our website, gadnr.org, and learn more about that. Okay, so within the Wildlife Resources Division, we have different sections. It's state government. We have everything nice and neat and organized. So how many of you hunt in here? Anybody? All right. How about fishing? All right. And how about bird watching? Even more hands, right? So game management, they handle things that you hunt. Fisheries management handles things that you fish. Wildlife conservation, also known as the non-game section, we handle that 95% of creatures that you don't hunt, fish, or trap. And oddly enough, there's no state tax dollars that go towards that, even though it's the bulk of the species. So if you hunt or fish, though, you are actually helping wildlife conservation by your license fees and the excise tax that goes on the equipment that you buy. So thank you, those of you who buy license for hunting or fishing. So I'm going to kind of come through the lens of wildlife conservation or the non-game side of things. That's what I'm most familiar with. I can speak to the other sections if needed, but that's kind of the angle I'll be coming from. So if any of you have traveled through the state, we have a really cool, diverse state with all these different ecoregions. So these different sections of color that you see on the map, those represent different areas that have different soil types, different microclimates, and different plants that grow in those soils, and hence different animals. So we have a really cool state in that we have all these diverse habitats. Which ecoregion are we in? The Piedmont, right? So, and it's very different than the southern part of the state. Anyone know what this fall line, what does that mean? Anyone know what that means? What's that? The gnat line, you're right, it is. It's absolutely the gnat line. You've been to South Georgia, I can tell. But why would they call it the fall line? What is that about?
The water goes away from it.
What's that?
The water moves away from it, goes south of it or downhill from it.
Okay, so the elevation changes, right? Anyone know what used to come up all the way to that area, that fall line? The ocean, yay! So yes, and there's a lot of waterfalls because the elevation changes, and that is why all of this soil down here is so sandy. And you can find, prehistoric, like fossils of ocean creatures in the middle of the state, which is really crazy. But we have a lot of rare species that live in the southern part of the state. All right, and we are really fortunate to be in a place that is what I consider a biodiversity hotspot, meaning there's a lot of different types of creatures. And so if you are into, big stuff, little stuff, medium stuff of the creature world, you're probably going to be pretty happy here if you're not already. These are just estimates of numbers of the different types of groups of animals that we have. So approximately 110 species of mammals, 425 species of birds. That would include resident and migratory birds that are just passing through. Amphibians, who can give me an example of an amphibian that lives here? See if y'all. Yeah, any kind of species.
Leopard frog.
There you go, leopard frog, awesome. Did you have one? Water dog, okay. All right, so good deal.
What dog, is that the same as mud puppy?
Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah. Do you have a question in the back?
Salamander?
Salamander would fall in that, yeah. Did you have a question?
Tell us about the colors.
Okay, so just as it kind of looks like the warmer colors, that's where it's hot. That's where there's a lot of biodiversity. And you can see that in the southeast here, there's a lot more species than maybe in the cooler areas out west. So they have much larger species out west than we do here, but we have more different kinds of little things. So here you could probably plop down in the middle of the woods and, you know, not move and find 30 things right around you. Might be really tiny, but yeah, so we just have a lot of variety of species. And reptiles, give me an example of a reptile that lives here in Georgia. Water moccasin, alligator, green anole. Any of you have those little green lizards crawling around your yard? Freshwater fish, and that does not include marine fish. Invertebrates, that's going to include a gazillion trillion different kinds of species that don't have backbones. So just a lot of variety here. You really will never get bored studying any kind of creatures here. So why is all of that important? Well, think of all of those different animals, big, small, medium, in between, ones we can see, ones we can't see, as kind of parts of a big machine, the machine being an ecosystem. And so for everything to work properly, all those little parts have to be here. Some of you older folks like me have seen watches, not digital ones, not Apple watches, actual watches and clocks that have gears and cogs and whatnot. And if you pull even the slightest little tiny piece out, you're going to have an issue, right? And when I do this kind of lesson with little children, I show them this little thing here. So this is the sun. These are plants, insects. That's a toad, a snake, and a hawk. So it's kind of like a food chain. So the sun kind of drives everything, right? If we took the sun out, then nothing would happen, right? The whole thing would just stop. What if we took out the toad? You'd only get plants and insects, and then the insects might kind of take over, right? And then you got no food for the snake or the hawk. So all of these little pieces is just a very simplified demonstration of how all of this works together to maintain life as we know it. And so it all matters. It's not just the ones we think are cute or fuzzy or cuddly or whatever. It's all these different creatures that matter. And so this is just one example of a gazillion trillion, I don't know how many different specialized interactions there are, but part of a food chain that is then part of a larger food web. So we have a yucca plant. I'm sure y'all are familiar with that, you native plant nerds in here. There's a moth that is specifically attracted to the yucca plant. There's a shrew that is eating the moth, and then barred owls that will eat the shrew. So you take any one of those out of the picture, it's not, that pathway is going to be broken, right? All right, so other reasons to care about wildlife, and we saw about as far as the nuts and bolts of things, that's what we call ecosystem services. If we didn't have the shrew eating the moth or the owl eating the shrew, then things would get out of balance, right? What do these guys eat? And what do they eat?
Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes. And also insects that can be really damaging to crops too, if there's any farmers in here. So they are very beneficial. They're not well, I don't know, it depends on who you ask. They're not the cutest things, but I do work with some folks that are bat biologists, and they refer to bats as sky puppies. And they have bumper stickers that say, "Save the sky puppies." But anyway, so you can probably think of other animals that do some sort of service for us, that if they weren't around, our life would be a little more miserable. And then, there's different currency for people on why they like wildlife. Some people really enjoy the economic value of wildlife. So we asked for a show of hands earlier on how many people go bird watching. There was a bunch here. How many of you have actually traveled somewhere to just see different birds? Is that it? Oh man, that's like my favorite thing to do. But you spend money on the road and on equipment and whatnot, and all of that fuels our economy. We do have different birding trails in Georgia. There's some, within the state parks, but also there's this Colonial Coast birding trail that's kind of neat to go on. And less tangible reasons for loving wildlife. How could you not love something like that? That is just incredible. Anyone know what that bird is? Yeah. Where is it supposed to be in the wintertime, you think?
Central America.
Yeah, Central and South America. Well, that was taken in my backyard in Griffin this past winter. So, and he stuck around for 3 months, and we banded him, and I'm real excited to see if he comes back this winter. So wildlife do weird things sometimes. You know, we've got it all, we think we have it all figured out. We've got these field guides and the range maps, and well, he showed up anyway. I don't know what that was about. And that is becoming a more common phenomenon for whatever reason. So,
Your feet.
well, I wasn't at first, though. I do think that they came down to some of the activity, you know, the frenzy of birds at the feeder. He was the only one, though. And it was also when we had that deep freeze in late December. And so, but why he was already here then, I have no idea. But he came to my suet. I have a suet log. And oh, you know what sealed the deal? I just remembered. I had a heated bird bath. So all the other water was frozen except for this little trickle. And so, you know, I was like, I didn't want to scare him. I had my camera, and I'm crawling around on the floor, you know, so I don't walk in front of the window and spook him and everything. And he stuck around 3 months. So I started putting out grape jelly. That's what they are really drawn. That truly sealed the deal. So that's what's in this little tray here until I got an actual Oriole feeder. And I ended up with 5 of them over the winter. So, but yeah, I mean, if that doesn't hook you into birds, I don't know what will. Just gorgeous. A Baltimore Oriole. So even in the spring when they migrate through, they're it's very unusual to find them. So we do get orchard orioles a little more frequently, but this guy is just brilliant and gorgeous. And I'm sure you can think of other wildlife that you just love because they're beautiful to look at. And then another less tangible thing perhaps, a lot of us just feel more calm when we're in nature. We feel a spiritual connection to something bigger than ourselves. And I think we all like to feel part of something bigger than ourselves. That's why you guys are here now, to see what you can do with the larger wildlife conservation picture. But yeah, just looking at a scene like that just kind of lowers your heart rate a little bit. And if you're sitting in the middle of that and there's no car sounds or alarms or, I don't know, TV going or whatever. And then, of course, we want to keep all of these awesome resources for future generations. We want our kids and our grandkids and their kids to enjoy what we do. So, and so I do a lot of environmental education for that reason. I have a wildlife management degree. I had every intention to be a field biologist. And my first foot in the door job with DNR, I was answering a state wildlife information phone line. So that tells you how long ago that was. We had no website. I think email was sort of on the cusp of happening, but I was like, what is that for? Why don't you just pick up the phone and call somebody or walk down the hallway? I didn't understand any of that. Now I'm, of course, deep in it. But yeah, so because you can have all the wonderful science in the world, but if nobody cares or nobody understands it, it's really not going to affect conservation in the long run. Oh, all right. So if our main goal is to protect biodiversity for all those reasons that we just mentioned, the ecosystem services, the economy, the beauty of it, the aesthetics, the connection that we feel to something greater than ourselves, we have to start with the species that are on the brink of going bye-bye. So some of our main focal animals are ones that are either rare, threatened, or endangered. And you don't think of Georgia as having those species because that's not necessarily what you see on TV all the time. I mean, especially me growing up, it was all African stuff, you know, it's rhinoceroses and lions and tigers, and all of those are important, but we have a lot going on in our own backyards too. So these are just some species that are considered some are more rare than others, but here in the state of Georgia. So the monarch, you may kind of be like, what's that about? So they're not listed as rare or threatened yet, but we have noticed their numbers are declining. In fact, you've maybe seen that in your own backyards, that you just don't see as many of them anymore. And it's a tough situation when you've got a creature that migrates really far. You can do so much in the US, but once it goes in another country, they may not have the same protections or care that we have here. Golden winged warbler is another one. Little brown bats. What is that fuzzy stuff on his face? It is a fungus called white nose syndrome. It was introduced, I want to say maybe 15 years ago, from a couple that came back from Europe. They were caving in Europe. They did not clean their equipment. They went caving here. And that was up in New York, and it has worked its way all the way down in a frenzy. So it's mostly cave-dwelling bats that it affects. The fungus itself doesn't kill them in and of itself, but it wakes them up from hibernation, and then they're going out in the middle of winter trying to catch insects, and there's nothing there, so they basically starve to death. So yeah, there's been, in some species, like a 90% decline in their bat populations because of the white nose syndrome. That other little thing that's very well camouflaged, that's a green salamander, and they're only found in like maybe one location in the state. Any of y'all ever been to South Georgia and seen these holes in the ground? So yeah, there's a sandy soil we talked about. They're probably, females can get about this big. They're decent size. And they are known as a keystone species. If you think of a Roman archway, that stone that's in the middle kind of holds all the weight of the other stones. They hold the weight of all the other creatures in the coastal plain ecosystems because of these burrows. So these burrows can go 40 feet across and 10 feet down, and there have been over 350 other species documented living in these burrows. So if you protect this guy, you're going to help all the other creatures, including the indigo snake that you saw at the Columbus Botanical Garden. And then, I'm sorry.
Rattlesnakes also.
Yes, rattlesnakes will go down there too. You know what though? The indigo snake, that's another rare species we have in the state. It's federally threatened, I believe. They get up to 8.5 feet long, longest native snake in all of North America. They eat venomous snakes. So they not only go down there to regulate their temperature, especially when it's cold out, they'll get a munchie too.
Gophers are pretty good to eat too.
Oh, you know what, they were at one time. Yeah, I think it was, during the Great Depression.
Hoover chicken.
Yes, Hoover chicken. I was trying to remember that name. But that's part of why maybe their numbers aren't as great as they could be. And then you may not realize, but we have right whales on the coast of Georgia. We are their calving grounds. So, and their numbers are critically low. And so they have their young down here this time of year, and then they work their way north for feeding grounds. And it's there that they hit a lot of lobster traps and have boat collisions and whatnot. So we have biologists working specifically on all of these creatures, because once they're gone, they're gone. Extinction is forever. So if we're trying to protect the whole number of species in our state, or in the southeast, or in the world for that matter, we gotta pay some attention to the ones that are most likely to blip out. You guys have rare species here in Coweta County, and you can look this up online if you want. It's called georgiabiodiversity.org. We call it the Biodiversity Portal. It's got all these fun little buttons. You can generate a list of the rare species in your county and your watershed in a smaller area, like a quad map. And so this is just a quick little screenshot of some of them. Alligator snapping turtle, bald eagles, Barber's map turtle, blue striped shiner, a little fish. There's several butterflies on here, frosted elfin, delicate spike. There's some plants, Georgia aster. Anyone have Georgia aster in your garden? You can buy it you can buy it in the nurseries now. So anyway, and then these letters off here, this is whether they're listed as rare, threatened, or endangered. There's two columns because there's a state threatened or endangered species list and a federal. This is the state, that's the federal. And so if something could be okay, and it's like the total range, it's doing okay, but not very well in Georgia. But if it's not doing well in its entire range, it's not going to be doing well here either. So E means endangered. This Gulf moccasin shell is a type of mussel or clam. So endangered and then listed as endangered. The PT at the top for the alligator snapping turtle, threatened in the state of Georgia. And P means petitioned, so it's not quite gone through the legalities of being listed as threatened, but it's on its way, basically. So yeah, if you guys want to look into that later, it's the other thing that's really cool. All of these species have fact sheets that go with them, so you can just click on that and learn everything you'd ever want to know and more. So there is some method to the madness. This is going to be about as nerdy as I'm going to get, so hang with me. There's so many different critters out there that need attention, and only so many biologists and only so much time and money. So we have to figure out where to put all of our efforts, where we really need to. So we have this very large document called the State Wildlife Action Plan, where DNR has pulled together all the experts from every type of taxa group you can think of, botanists, biologists, climate change experts, environmental educators like me, and really brainstormed on, okay, what needs to happen to help the most species in the most areas of the state, basically. We have a list of 349 animals, 290 plant species that we consider high priority. So those are called species of greatest conservation need. And then we have 150 recommended actions, such as prescribed fire here, to help their habitat and boost their population. So if you really want to nerd out, you can go online and read the, I don't know, it was like 500-page document. So we're in the middle of a revision. We get federal funds for this, but the plan has to be updated every 10 years for the funding to continue. So I'm going to kind of weave into why backyard habitats are important for that larger effort. Okay, so not only do we care about the rare stuff, they are kind of like the poster children of wildlife conservation. We really don't want them to become rare to begin with. We don't want species on the endangered species list. Some people go, what? Then they'll get more attention. Well, that also means that their population is too low, right? You want to prevent that from happening. So these is just a spattering of some common species that you could have around that, if we're not careful, they could be uncommon someday, because there are new threats that come up all the time. There's new diseases, there's habitat loss, different threats. Any of you ever see any of these creatures in your backyard? All of them?
We really have to say the chipmunks.
I know, people have varying opinions about the chipmunks. I get that. I know, it depends. I have them in my yard, but they're not digging in my, foundation or anything. So, and I have 4 cats, and they all stay indoors. So no, they don't kill the chipmunks, but they like to watch them. They'll slam themselves up against the glass trying to get at one. But yeah, this is all part of why we love nature. It's not just those rare species. Those are cool, but we want to keep the common species around too. So, for years, our culture has basically put the weight of all of this wildlife conservation issue on the biologist, on the scientist, and that is part of where it needs to be. But we're learning that that's too small of a pool to really move the needle towards, improved wildlife conservation. It's really going to take everybody. So because we all benefit, it really makes sense that we would all help in that regard too. Every person on Earth depends entirely on the quality of Earth's ecosystems. So every person on Earth, not just a few scientists, bears a responsibility for good Earth stewardship. And so I'm excited that y'all are here to learn more about that. We are going to get into actual habitat creation. So why do we need backyard habitats? I mean, yes, it's for our own personal enjoyment, but thinking bigger picture, we're trying to combat this situation here and that situation. So this is actually a Google Maps screenshot right around the extension office here. And Coweta County's not built up like some. I grew up in Roswell, so North Fulton County. That was in the 70s and 80s. Completely different place now. All the little woods I used to play in are no longer there. So you still have some green space left. But there's a lot of fragmentation, right? You've got neighborhoods popping up, and this is basically an ecological desert here. It might look green, but just because something's green doesn't really mean it's great for wildlife. There might be a few species that live there, but you know, they're going to have a hard time. So this little turtle there, that's to remind me to get out a little friend here. So imagine that a box turtle is trying to cross I-85. Is that going to go well? And he might be, you know, in this green space here, but he's still looking for certain foods or whatever. Or, you know, after it rains, all the worms come up and they want to get some juicy worms. So yes, this is an eastern box turtle. I'll walk around a little bit so you guys can see a little closer. This one's not shy, can you tell? He's like, hello. Thanks for taking me out of the box. His name is Frank. And he lives at Panola Mountain State Park. So you can visit Frank anytime you like. It's in Stockbridge. He's been around a while. He's doing really well. Not every box turtle is going to come out for you like this. Most of them are going to clam up like a box, hence their name. They actually have a hinge on their lower shell. This is called the plastron. So this hinge here is kind of like a door. So he's one of the few turtles that can truly pull every limb in and shut the door. And it's really great protection for them. Can turtles crawl out of their shells? No. We've seen that in cartoons though, right? Yeah, they actually have a spine, you know, backbone in there. So this really hard shell though, it protects them quite a bit. So you can imagine him trying to get around. Their home range can be 2 acres to 10 acres, probably closer to the lower end there. And so as more and more things are developed, it's going to be much harder for him to safely get around. So, yep. Oh, they just have some variation. This is a male, and so they tend to have red eyes, and they can be a little more color intense. You want to take him home? Some states it's legal to keep box turtles as pets. Georgia, it is not. We're a little bit stricter than some of our surrounding states, which makes law enforcement fun. You know, people move in from different places, and you wouldn't believe some of the stuff that our folks find. You know, the police will do a drug raid or something, and there's a turkey vulture in the middle of the living room eating pennies and paper clips, you know, just, oh man, people do crazy things.
Is there any place special I would put him if I found him? Because I find him quite often on my road walking across the street.
You don't want to move them far. If they are in the middle of the road,
off the asphalt.
yeah, you can do that. That's fine, but don't take them down the road or anything. Okay. So if they're facing this direction, whatever direction they're facing in the road, and of course make sure you don't get squashed in this process, you want to put them in that direction. If you put him over here, he's got a reason for going over there. He's just going to go out in the middle of the road again. But yeah, because they have a relatively small home range, if you take them down the road to what you think is a better habitat for him, he's going to be so stressed out. He doesn't know where he is. He's not familiar with the area, and they will basically walk around in circles trying to find their way home. So it's not good. And I know people, you know, they have good intentions for doing that, but unless it's just truly like there's bulldozers around or something, it's best just to put them, you know, maybe 20, 30 feet off the road, and that'll be fine. Right, Frank?
Does it have any natural enemies?
Oh yeah, I mean coyotes, especially when they're smaller, they're more chicken nugget size and their shells aren't as hard. Yeah, I know, they're so cute when they're that little. Yeah, so, but I mean, like I say, they have some pretty good defenses. I would say the worst enemy right now is cars. There's only a few places that do wildlife rehab for turtles. Chattahoochee Nature Center in Roswell is one of the best. And they're constantly, you know, having to try and fix shells. Sometimes they can't. They have to humanely euthanize them. These box turtles also get different respiratory illnesses and like ear infections. So if you ever come across one that has like these, what looks like growth on the side of its head, or its eyes are shut or whatever, it's going to need some sort of antibiotics to get over that. they don't have doctors out there that they go to. They have to rely on us. All right, so that's the main number one reason, aside from any other threats that are out there. Hunting has never caused extinction. Fishing has never caused extinction. Any kind of legal take of wildlife has never caused really an issue, because all of those rules are based on the natural reproduction rates of those animals. So we can take a lot of deer in the state, because we have a lot of deer in the state. And they will actually eat themselves out of house and home if you let them. All right, so these are some other threats to wildlife. We mentioned destruction and fragmentation of habitat. I'm sure y'all will see more dirt around here if you haven't already, just because that seems to be the nature of things. Pollution, harmful chemicals like rodenticides, car collisions. Y'all know about extreme weather like this right here. Any of you have any get hit by that tornado a couple of years ago here in Noonan, or come close to it? Yeah. We had 5 tornadoes in Spalding County back on January 12th. And Spalding County's itty bitty. And how we didn't get hit, I have no idea. But that seems to be more common these days. Kitty cats, as you know, I love them. I got 4 of them. Mine stay indoors because even the laziest cat will do that. They'll snag your birds. And what is that picture in the bottom right? Do you know? Kudzu. Just kind of engulfs everything, right? So these are some other threats to wildlife, and we're going to try and, best we can, reverse some of these. We can't do that with all things. We can't stop a tornado. But there are some things that we can, do more immediately. So, main thing that you can do to help wildlife, because habitat loss and alteration and fragmentation is the number one reason for their decline, you can recreate habitat. Either create it from scratch or restore what you have. And so you basically have to have these components for it to succeed. If you want Frank to hang out there, he's got to have food, water, shelter, and places to raise young safely. I'm going to put him back because he's like airwalking here. But anyway, yeah, and so that would be for any species that you want to attract to your yard. So, and y'all probably already do that. I'm probably preaching to the choir here. But yeah, so this large thing over here you may not think of though as shelter. That's a brush pile. So anytime you're clearing out your stuff, if you got a place in the back of the yard where it's not going to be so unsightly, there's all kind of creatures that will hang out in there for shelter. And it doesn't cost anything, right? Oh, anyone know what that is?
American Beauty Plant.
It's American Beauty Bear. You know what? We have one. There's a nice lady in my neighborhood named Tisa Watson. She used to work for, I guess, Spalding County Extension. She's retired now. And I don't know if she started this in our neighborhood, but there is this plant, we call it the plant palette. It's in front of this guy's house, and it's got a little mini library there, and people just bring plants, and then they post on our neighborhood Facebook page, hey, I just dropped off some ferns or whatever. And so she was kind enough, she knew I was coming to this event tonight, and she's like, I got some swamp milkweed for you. And then I brought some stuff from my yard too. So yeah, these are all natives. And so yeah, but that's American beautyberry, very wonderful native plant that almost looks like it wouldn't be native with those really neon purple berries, but that mockingbird there is really enjoying it. I've seen gray catbirds at it. Bluebirds even will eat those berries. You don't really think of that, but I've got a few in my yard and they love it. All right, so thinking back to Frank and his plight, if he's trying to find a way to get around in his small area and find that food, water, shelter, and places to raise young, it's going to be a whole lot easier if he's got this solid corridor there, right? Maybe, thinking back to that Google map, you have larger areas of green space, and if there's, Highway 85 in the middle of it, can't do a whole lot to get from here to there. But if you don't have a solid corridor, perhaps you live in a neighborhood and you would do a backyard habitat, and your neighbor just a few houses down does another one. We call these little patches of habitat like stepping stones between one larger green space and another. So it doesn't completely eliminate the danger of them traveling around, but it definitely makes it a little easier for them. And then you also have better reproduction rates because you've got more individuals able to get around to each other rather than just isolating into one little patch here. So that is the bigger picture of how your little habitat can make a difference in a bigger way. So how do we tackle that? I would say one of the first things to do is to learn how to identify the plants in your yard. There are some really cool AI apps. I use Picture This. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. These are just some real common plants that you're going to find. This is not an exhaustive slide here by any means, but bamboo, English ivy, Russian olive, or some of you know it as Eleagnus, or some people call it ugly Agnes. Periwinkle or vinca, same thing. Speaking of periwinkle, I had a whole slope. I moved into a 1960s house in Griffin about 3 years ago, and that was the era that they planted all this stuff because they didn't know any different. They didn't know English ivy was going to take over, or Russian olive was going to take over, or privet, or any of that, or nandina, or the bamboo for that matter. It's just, oh, this cool exotic plant, let's put something neat in our yard. Well, now it's all over the place. And I mean, it'll probably be 20, 30 years before I finish this, probably till I die. I'm hand pulling all these invasive exotics. So anyway, with the periwinkle, it's pretty, it's a nice, low maintenance thing, but I wanted space in my yard that had actual sun to put some native plants. So I've been hand pulling this. That is where all of this Carolina wild petunia started coming in. I did not plant it. Oh, let's see if I can get it out. It doesn't look like a whole lot right here. Oh, sorry about that. Ooh, what did I do? Hold on. I can get back there. Let's see. Yeah, y'all getting a sneak preview. Oh, hold on. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Let me put this down. So I have an entire slope now covered in this, and I know it doesn't look very exciting right now, but it does have purple flowers on it that the hummingbirds love, and it will spread. So you got to give it some space, but it looks.
What's the name of that plant?
Carolina wild petunia. It's anybody ever go to the native plant nursery in Fayetteville? It's called Nearly Native. It cracks me up when I go to some of these native plant sales and they're selling this, and I'm like, I got a whole ton of it. Just come over and dig some up. It's almost gotten to be too much. It is. Now it's mostly open in the morning, and then it kind of closes and then it reopens.
So how come, if it's so invasive, they sell vinca in the stores?
That is a really good question, and I don't have a good answer. I would say because it makes money. So I went to a nursery in Griffin, I won't name names, and I was looking for a native anise shrub. I wanted an evergreen shrub to plant in front of the neighbor's ugly log pile. Just kind of not have to see it anymore. So they had that there. I was excited about that. They also had a $60 huge pot of Eleagnus. And I was like, okay, I gotta calm myself here. But I was like, you realize that stuff, I told the lady there that was working there, I was like, you realize it's really invasive. She's like, oh, I know, it sure is. And I said, I'm killing that stuff in my yard left and right. I'm trying to get rid of it. Yeah. It's like, so why are you selling it here? Like thinking you might care about the bigger conservation picture. Oh, people just love it. They just love it. They just want to, So it was supply and demand, and that's really a little disturbing, but.
I have purchased it, just so you know.
Okay, well, no offense.
But I didn't know.
Well, yeah, a lot of people don't, and that's what happens. I don't think people who plant this stuff are evil, or the ones that already planted it. They're just going to the nursery looking for something to fill a void, and whatever's there is what they grab, whether it's a big box store or a, mom and pop nursery or whatever.
It's a historical plant. I mean, it's done its job in South Africa and all and other places.
Yeah, I mean, it does have some wildlife value, but that's also what makes it very invasive. The birds and other creatures eat those berries, poop them out, and it is just stout stuff. It does. It gets huge, and so people like it for hedges. Same thing with the bamboo. But what happens? Why do we have an issue? I realize I'm not doing the current slide thing. Yeah, well, that's part of it. But really, we're thinking back to, sorry, let me see, there we go. Hang on, give it a second. Thinking back to that larger biodiversity picture, and that we want all those little parts and pieces to do their thing. Well, if you've got bully plants, basically, they're not going to be able to do their thing. This stuff's going to take over and greatly reduce the actual number of species that are on your property because they take over. So that's the issue with invasive exotic plants. And there's so many cool natives that you can use in their place. And it's just, you got to just think outside the box a little bit. And it is a little harder to find them too. So that's part of the issue that I think is getting a little better as more people demand native plants, more business owners are wanting to carry them. All right, so structurally, you want to have as many layers in your yard as possible. I understand you may only have a balcony and you can't do this, or you may just have a little itty bitty space and you may not be able to do this. But if you have any, half an acre to an acre or even more, you want to have some tall trees, mid-story, little shrubby things. And in each of those layers, we call those niches in the wildlife biology world. It allows for more species to live and coexist peacefully. So evergreens are really good for cardinals. They specifically like that. The larger snags are good for hawks to nest in. Brush pile is good for the song sparrows. So you've got kind of creatures, that's just birds. I mean, I could talk about mammals and stuff in there too, but so yeah, the more variety of height and different types of plants, the more creatures you're going to have. Leave dead snags, so dead trees or logs even, if you can. I understand they might be endangering your house, and obviously you can't leave it up then. Griffin, the neighborhood I'm in, I mentioned it was 1960s. We have a lot of old trees endangering people's homes. And the tree companies there, they stay super busy. But they are like grocery stores for anything that eats insects. They can provide shelter for not just woodpeckers, but like white-breasted nuthatches here. Bluebirds even naturally live in these cavities. So if you have a dead tree and it's not endangering your house, then please leave it up for the critters. Landscape with native plants. Melanie told me that y'all are a bunch of native plant nerds, so I'm probably not telling you anything new here. There's just so many cool varieties of things. Not just stuff that you buy. This is, once you pull all those invasive exotics and you kind of see what you got left, there could be stuff that you have that they don't even sell at the plant nursery that's cool. And even some things that people kind of consider trashy plants like winged sumac. They make all these berries, and I've even heard people make Kool-Aid out of it. And I have the coral honeysuckle in the bottom. Anyone else have that blooming right now? Woo, that's like a hummingbird magnet. It is just constantly. So feeders, you might have thought, well, I'm going to do a whole presentation about bird feeders, right? And I could, but those are really meant to be supplemental to your landscaping. The landscaping is key. The feeders are good in a pinch. I do put feeders out, especially in the wintertime, to kind of get everybody over that hump when nothing else is blooming or seeding or fruiting or whatever. But yeah, that's not really meant to be the staple. What could happen if you have just bird feeders, like a bunch of different bird feeders around? Mm-hmm.
That honeysuckle, is that native?
It is.
There's another honeysuckle.
But yeah, the Japanese, that's not what we want, yeah. Yeah. So the coral honeysuckle is native. It's really cool looking. And it grows pretty fast, and it's semi-evergreen, so it's not going to look completely dead in the winter, which is nice. But yeah, if you have too many bird feeders and too much, I'd say, unnatural numbers of birds, what can happen? Was that? Squirrel, yeah. Well, that's part of it. But as far as their health goes, what happens when you have an unnatural concentration of food in one space? What could happen?
They get dependent upon it.
They get dependent upon it, yeah. Disease, that's what I was thinking of. Any of you ever see house finches with like this eye goop? House finch eye disease, or I saw a mourning dove the other day that looked like it had warts all over its face. That's an avian pox. Sometimes these things in and of themselves don't kill the birds, but it definitely makes them more susceptible to predators, and you don't want all that spreading. And so if you ever see that, you've got to take your feeders down just for a little while. Make sure you clean them good with some bleach, and then you can put them back out. But you don't have to worry about all that if you've got natural foods for them. They kind of naturally disperse out. So why use native plants? Well, they're beautiful, and they are more likely to imitate a natural ecosystem. Remember those little stepping stones and the corridors and the bigger picture we're trying to be part of? So if you plant native plants, you're kind of just restoring part of that area. And so that kind of helps the wildlife just overall. And also, these are the plants that our wildlife have learned to evolve with for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It's what they're used to. It's more nutritious for them. And they're better adapted to our climate and less maintenance, really. I don't know if any of y'all have seen this graphic before, but our native plants also have much more extensive root systems than, say, there's nothing evil about a hydrangea. But I mean, they're lovely. But if that's all you had in your yard and you have a slope and you have a heavy rain, where's all that soil going? It's going to eventually end up in the waterways, and siltation is one of the worst sources of pollution that we have in our waterways. So that helps prevent erosion. And so you're wondering, well, how do I start? How do I know what's native, what's not, what's really horrifying, invasive exotic, and which not? You can go to this website, Georgia Exotic Pest Plant Council, and they have alternatives, for different types of plants that you may have in your yard and what a good native alternative would be. So it would serve the same purpose in your yard. It might be a ground cover, it might be evergreen, or it might produce berries or flowers for hummingbirds or whatever it is. So that's a good source. We have a YouTube channel. During COVID, I couldn't do much outreach, so I made videos. And so I have one on invasive exotics, and I've got a list there within the video of some of the top 10 worst ones, I guess you could say. We've already talked about some of them. So that's another resource. You want to try and have things that are doing something year-round. They kind of alternate, We got the azaleas in the spring. We got the button bush in the middle there in the summer. You've got Georgia aster in the fall. And so, for pollinators in particular, you've got something for them all season long. And so just kind of think about that. When you're doing research, you're going to have to see, does this thing need sun, or does it need part shade? What kind of water requirements? What kind of soil? Is it not picky? Is it very picky? And if you put the right plant in the right spot, it'll do its thing. But if you don't, if you try and force it into a plant that likes shade and the sun, you're not going to be real happy with the outcome. All right, and there are some plants that have a little bit bigger bang for the buck as far as wildlife go that they're attracted to. And National Wildlife Federation, they have a resource called the Native Plant Finder. And you can go in there and put your zip code in, and it'll give you suggestions on different plants that you can put in your area that have great benefit for wildlife. Oaks in particular, it's not just the acorns. They attract a lot of caterpillars that songbirds require to raise their young. And anyone ever seen this book by Doug Tallamy, Nature's Best Hope? He goes into detail on what it takes for a chickadee to raise a family and how many caterpillars and how important oaks are for that whole process. So, and you may have them on your property already. You don't have to go plant them. You just get rid of those invasive exotics, and lo and behold, there's a little white oak there. That happens a lot. Goldenrod and cutleaf coneflower, great for pollinators. We've got black cherry. All the berries are great for different wildlife. And install nest boxes. If you have a snag, great. But a lot of people don't keep dead trees around their house, right? So don't think about just the bluebirds. Bluebirds are awesome. That's a wonderful conservation success story when people started putting nest boxes out for them because their numbers were declining at one time. And the nest box, that whole wave really helped their populations. There's all kind of other cool creatures you can attract though. These are in my front yard. So I had the Oriole in the backyard and I had these in the front yard. So I put up a barred owl box when I first moved in 3 years ago because I saw barred owls in the yard. And we live in a subdivision. This is not like nature land, I'm turning it into that. But we have a creek nearby. There's some bottomland hardwoods. That's really typical barred owl habitat. I saw where they were flying through the canopy. And I'm like, I'm going to stick this box where they just have to run into it. I had no idea if they were going to like it or not. Never tried this before. Lo and behold, they've nested there the past 3 years. So those are two of the, I call them floofs.
How high would you set them up?
If you look on Cornell Lab of Ornithology's nestwatch.org, it'll say like 20 feet. I don't know if that's going to work or not. This is about 40 feet up. I had to hire a tree climbing guy to get this up, and I pay for one every year, every spring. They cut back some of the shoots that come out of the tulip poplar and crowd out the the entrance hole. I have them put fresh shavings in. And this is actually made out of cedar. I had it custom made, so it wasn't cheap, but it'll last forever. And so yeah, that's how much I love critters. You may not be able to do that. So however high you can get it, you know, if you have a 20-foot, 30-foot ladder, whatever, that you can easily get up to and maintain. This is on a slope and way up, and so, but I mean, it's successful, and I just get such a kick out of those things every year. Bat boxes, I've never tried this in my yard, but that's something worth looking into. If you don't have it up against a structure, you're probably going to need more than one chamber. They're kind of picky about their temperature, and if the temperature isn't regulated by a house, you know, or a building that might be insulated, then they may not use it. So they want to be able, if they get too hot on this side of the box, say, and it gets too warm, they want to be able to crawl to another chamber on the other side where there's shade. So you'll have more success if it's 2 or 3 chambers. So these are just some ideas. All of these are spatterings. You're going to have a million questions. I feel like I've got the fire hose at you right now, so hopefully it's not too overwhelming, but I'm sure I'm kicking some ideas around in your head as you see these. Ideally, if you have a nest box, maybe not the owl box, because I don't think the rat snake's going to get 40 feet up, most likely not. And the owl's probably going to take care of them anyway. But for, bluebirds, brown-headed nuthatches, titmice, some of the smaller songbirds, ideally you put the box on a pole rather than a tree, because if you don't have a predator guard, and you wouldn't have one on the tree necessarily, you get Mr. Rat Snake coming in for some munchies. And I lost a nest of brown-headed nuthatches to that, unfortunately. So I learned my lesson. And it doesn't have to be expensive. You can make your own predator guards. This one was purchased, it's from one of the wild bird stores, but you can get a plant pot and just turn it upside down and get a little clamp on the pole, which that pole is an electrical conduit from Home Depot. You don't have to spend the big bucks for it. And just clamp it on there, and they can't physically get around that angle to get up to the young. And of course, you don't want any overhanging branches. That kind of defeats the purpose of it all, right? So, you can be near the edge of the woods, but just not where they can climb down from above. All right, other suggestions to help make your yard more friendly for wildlife. Think about the nocturnal creatures and how the lights can be disturbing to them. My poor husband, he wanted to turn on the pretty lights to our house. And I'm like, no, there's owls out there, don't do that. So, for 3 months or whatever, it's just gonna have to be in the dark. But mainly for creatures that migrate and for bats, they can be disoriented by the lights, and they can smack into things that they otherwise wouldn't smack into. So consider that, and there are bug lights that you can put out that aren't as irritating for the wildlife too. We were in the middle of migration season. We had, spring migration, fall will be coming up. There's this really cool website you can go to get a feel for the numbers of birds flying over your house at any given night. And it's called birdcast.info, and part of Cornell Lab of Ornithology, but super cool resource. And on those nights in particular, you want to make sure your lights are turned off. Clean water is important, just as it is for us. This is a heated bird bath off to the right. That's not the one I use for the Oriole, but that little goldfinch is excited. So we don't have a lot of really cold days, but I tell you what, when we do and everybody else doesn't have their heated bird bath, they're going to all be coming to your little spot there. And of course, try and clean it out. If you're worried about mosquitoes, you can if it's easy to dump, just dump it every couple days. The little larvae won't hatch out. Or you can get those little donuts. Y'all ever see those mosquito dunks? And you don't need a big one. You can just get a little piece of it and stick it in there. The one picture in the middle there, that is to show that you need something with a little bit of a slope. If it's too deep, like a lot of these concrete basin ones are, something like a chickadee is not going to feel comfortable going in there. They need like a little ramp. A robin might be fine, but I don't know, it's too, they feel too vulnerable doing that. Insects. All these plants that you're planting are going to attract insects, not just butterflies, but bees also, and things that these creatures, songbirds and bats and whatnot eat. So got to make it happy for them. When you trim your plants, if you trim or deadhead things, don't go all the way to the ground. Leave a little bit sticking up because the insects will use that for overwintering. What is this thing up in the right-hand corner? Do y'all know? Yeah, there's all different kinds of designs for like bee houses, basically. And then the picture on the right shows some bare dirt, and there are certain species of bees that need that bare dirt to nest in. So you don't cover the whole yard making it perfect. Leave a little space for some bare dirt too. All right, obviously if we're attracting all these things, we don't want to invite them to a death trap. So be sure you don't use pesticides if at all possible. If you feel like you have to use them in your house, keep it very localized. Just go right around your house. These companies that do the mosquito spraying and say, oh, it just kills the mosquitoes. That's not true, so unfortunately. For years ago, there used to be these little tags on like Home Depot or Lowe's plants. Says, this plant is protected from problematic aphids, whiteflies, beetles, and mealybugs, and other unwanted pests. Well, guess what? If you want a butterfly to come to that, it's not going to like it too much either. But they've been sprayed by, I'm going to try and say this, neonicotinoids or something like that. They're not doing that as much now, but if you get plants from a native plant nursery versus a big box store, they're less likely to be sprayed with this stuff. You would hate to like be trying to invite stuff to your yard and then kill it unknowingly. You've got this cool habitat. Might as well contribute to science in your own backyard. There are all these different citizen science projects that you can contribute data to. There again, there's not enough of us around, not enough biologists and scientists. And so more eyes on the things, the better. So any of you contribute to any citizen science projects? You watch wildlife in your backyard and upload data online? Which one do you do? Okay, eBird. Yeah, so even if you go birding, you can put in a checklist. That's important data for population studies. Project Budburst, it's basically you're looking at plants that are common in landscapes and just making a record of when they bloom, when they fruit or seed or whatever. It's studying phenology, which is the timing of when things occur in nature. So when the plant blooms, when the bug comes, when the bird eats the bug or feeds it to the babies. And so with issues with climate change, a lot of that can get out of whack and out of sync. And that's mainly what they're studying. Cornell also has Nest Watch. That's where you have a lot of really cool nest box plans on that nestwatch.org. Project Feeder Watch is wintertime. And this one in the top left, it's kind of a hard sell because it's not got a real catchy name. EDMAPS. It's Early Detection and Distribution Mapping System for Invasive Species. So, thing I mentioned there and more, I have tallow tree, Chinese tallow tree coming up. I mean, that's just weird. So you can just put a dot on the map if you find it. It helps them better track where these things are occurring and try and control them. There's also an option on there. If you've killed the thing and pulled it up, then you can record that. Or if it's just this big swath that you can't possibly handle, you put that down too. So there are biologists that are working on these issues. You can also certify your habitat. Any of you have a habitat certification in your yard? Yeah, what you got? Which one do you have? Oh, okay, Monarchs Across Georgia, awesome. That is an initiative through the Environmental Education Alliance of Georgia. Super awesome people. They don't just care about monarchs, they care about other pollinators too. But if you go through, it's all voluntary usually. They don't send someone out to your house, but you just have to have certain requirements and check off some boxes. You can find all that online. And you can get these groovy little signs and you put that up in your yard and people, instead of asking if your lawnmower's broken, they'll understand why you let everything grow and get kind of weedy looking. It's for the bees and the butterflies. Yeah, I have a friend, one of the biologists, she's a bat biologist. She let everything grow. You probably heard of No Mow May. Did y'all ever hear that little initiative? Don't cut your grass in May, let everything get crazy. And she had a neighbor, instead of just saying, "What's up with you? And you didn't cut your grass. Do you need is your lawnmower malfunctioning?" They said, "No." All right, so if you invite all the creatures that you like and enjoy those, be prepared that you may have some other ones you didn't think about coming. So deer, I know, can be an issue. There are certain plants that are more deer resistant than others, so if that's a really big problem in your yard, do some research on that. But I have found, and I promise I'm not a promo specialist for this company, this deer repellent, I found that to work pretty well. So I have to put it right on or very close to the specific plant that I want to protect. And sometimes if it's a big plant, I have to put 2 of them. But they're basically like a little green dome. And they come with these little things. So you just slide it. It's got a little place in the top, and you just hang the little dome from here. I think it's more for like vegetables, but I use it for my native plants. This may not work for everything, and so I might have one of those plant support things. They're green, they're covered like in vinyl and have a little circle at the top, and I'll just hang it on that. Sometimes with just a bread twisty or something. But that's the only way I've had purple cone flowers grow, because otherwise they just get nibbled on before anything happens. So yeah, and I think they're about $15 or $16 on Amazon for a pack of 6. So, but I don't really know what they smell like, but I don't think it's mothballs. It's just stinky. So the repellent's actually inside the little dome, and it's got a little crack at the bottom, so they smell it. It's kind of granular. I mean, I've dropped one on the ground before, and it just looks like coffee grounds or something that come out. But the nice thing about it, it doesn't wash away in the rain. It will last the entire season. And so I have it on my columbine, I have it on my native azaleas, I have it on my summer sweet, plethora, and they're actually growing, which is really worth the money. And of course, you could get snakes in your yard. How many of you have ever seen a snake in your yard? Ooh, wow, lots of you. And you're still out there, right? So it wasn't that scary. So yes, we have 46 different species of snakes. I am going to get one out, just so you know. 46 different species of snakes in Georgia. Only 6 are venomous. Not all 6 live here. This one could live here, but it's more common in South Georgia. Anyone know what kind this is? It's a corn snake. So it's a type of rat snake. More commonly, we would have a black rat snake. I'm just going to walk down here, if that's all right. So, and at the end, do you want to touch it? So they're not slimy. Unlike my face, I'm all hot, so sorry about that. But yeah, you can't hold them, but you can touch them.
Oh.
We're state government, we have rules, sorry.
Okay. I was going to ask you if I could hold a turtle, because it's so cute. Aw.
But yeah, I mean, they're not out to get you. I guess it's the main lesson. Corn. Mm-hmm. Or some people call it a red rat snake. What's that?
Okay, I thought it was a gopher.
Oh, no, that's a different species. Yeah, you're thinking like a bull snake. We do have one called a pine snake that's related to that. But yeah, so if you come across this, I know it's human nature for a lot of people just to like freak out, try and whack it, but it's actually illegal to kill a non-venomous snake in Georgia. I'm not saying we have snake police out, but they're here for a reason. There are rules and, laws for that for a reason. Not only just eat rodents, but lots of other garden pests even. And some of our snakes don't get any bigger than the length and thickness of a pencil. We have a lot of snakes that go, oh, it's a baby snake. It's not necessarily. So there are a lot that just are like good garden snakes. Did you want to touch? What does it feel like? Is it slimy? Nah.
Feels like snake.
Might feel a little cool to the touch. I think it kind of feels like a bicycle tire. So yeah, they really are beautiful. Now, would you know this is a corn snake if you saw it, or would you think it's something else? Something else. What do you think? Copperhead, right? You want to see a copperhead? I have a copperhead. It's been sitting on the table the entire time. It is in a locked case. It's not going to hurt anybody. I wanted you to see up close that these two look nothing alike. And it's important to know what a copperhead looks like, because although most of the things that we invite to our yards are, you know, not harmful, and copperheads are not out to get you either, but if you accidentally step on one, you're going to have more repercussions than if you accidentally step on this guy. And they have a very unique pattern, so we'll get to see both of those. I think I'm getting ahead of myself on the screen here. And we are almost towards the end of our presentation. I don't know what time it is. Let's see. Okay. So, I mentioned this already. These are some of the smaller snakes. That one on the top left, people blame for a copperhead all the time. It is called a brown snake. Super exciting name, right? And that is as big as it gets. Like I say, maybe 12, 14 inches long, thickness of a pencil. It eats bugs. It doesn't even really have any fangs. It's got like sandpaper for teeth. This little guy, on the other hand, this is a juvenile black rat snake, a baby of this one. This thing bit me like crazy. Any of you who use bird netting understand you're going to have to check it regularly for this right here. Snakes get caught in there, birds get caught in there, lots of things can be injured. If there's any way you can not use bird netting, that would be awesome. The one on the top right also gets blamed to be a copperhead. That is a water snake, so non-venomous.
Top middle, what was that?
Oh, that's called a ringneck snake.
I have them in my garage.
Oh yeah, I mean they're just eating bugs. I mean that's an itty bitty one. They get a little bit bigger than that. They get about the same size as a brown snake, but that's it. I mean totally harmless. You can pick them up. They're not going to bite you. So you don't need to learn all 46 species to not be terrified to go out in your yard. Like I said, the copperhead is the most common venomous snake around here. We also have timber rattlesnakes. You pointed one out on, was it the Silver Comet Trail? I don't think they're real common. They're not near as common as copperheads are. And even copperheads are not like lurking everywhere waiting for you to come outside. It's just, there again, you just got to be a little more cautious around them. I do have brochures here, Venomous Snakes of Georgia, that highlights the 6 species. Not all 6 live in this part of the state, so you can narrow it down even further. It opens up to a panel of each of the snakes with the range map and just some like field guide marks.
Who takes pictures that for you?
What's that?
Snake is pointing out.
Oh yeah, oh he's like my Vanna, right? And there are smaller pictures of the other snakes too. And we've got, of course, stuff on our website for all that, georgiawildlife.com. So just learn the ones that are venomous in your area. I would say mainly the copperhead and the timber rattle, but even less so. So let's get out this guy. He's in an acrylic clear case. And they're not any more aggressive than any other snake. I mean, obviously, if you're trying to whack them in the head, then they're going to try and protect themselves. Snakes can't scream at you, you know, to say, hey, get your foot off my back or whatever. Yeah, sure. If you can just pull on that, I'll hold the case. And obviously, we don't want to be pecking at, or, you know, tapping on this box. There we go. So he's not the largest one, but you can definitely get a good feel. If you're terrified, I won't come near you. What I'll do, I'll just keep these up here after because we're just about done with the presentation. If you want to come up and see them. They are really beautiful. They have kind of like an hourglass banding pattern where it's wide on the side, narrow on the top, wide on the side again. Some people refer to it as Hershey Kisses. I had one master naturalist called it poop emoji. The poop emoji pattern.
Can I see his head?
Yeah, sure.
There you go.
This is the one, yeah, in the case is a copperhead. So corn snake does not have the Hershey Kisses pattern. You can't just go by color because even the copperhead can be a little bit different color than this. They can vary in peach to beige to brown to gray. Even these guys can be a little darker, a little lighter. So just go by the pattern. There's nothing else that has that pattern. And so I know some of you are, you know, really freaked out by snakes, so I don't want to walk down there with it, but I will be here and the snakes will be here afterwards. What's that?
Short and fat, poisonous, long and skinny.
Yeah, there are some generalities. They're not always good. This one, I wouldn't call this snake especially fat. So it's, yeah, I mean, if it's full grown Yes, in general, if they're shorter and stockier, that's probably a venomous snake versus like a black rat snake that's going to be long and skinny. But I actually have a slide to that effect. Oh, I forgot about this. If you have a small snake, like that brown one, and it's got a bright sulfur yellow tail, it's venomous. If it doesn't have a bright sulfur yellow tail and it's little, it's not venomous. So we got the copperhead in the top. Pygmy rattlesnake are super common, or not super common in South Georgia, but not here. And they're, as their name implies, they're very small rattlesnakes. Cottonmouth, their characteristic, even when they're older, is this dark stripe that goes from their eye kind of back towards their neck. And because a lot of times that brilliant pattern there is going to change to more of a kind of a charcoal gray washed out pattern when they get older. Someone have a question?
I have a orange snake with the bands that are black and look like wings.
Okay.
And it's a bright orange.
Is it just on the belly?
No, it's all over the snake.
Is it near water?
Yes.
Okay, there's one called a red belly water snake. That would be my best guess without seeing a picture. And they call it red, but I mean, like they call this a red rat snake. Yeah, it's really more orange. Yeah. Okay, so no. So people call cottonmouth, which is a particular species of water snake, they'll call it a water moccasin. And so then that kind of implies that all things that are in the water or water snakes are venomous. But there's a lot of other species of water snakes that are not venomous. And they can have a triangle-shaped head and not be venomous. A snake like this with a rounded head, if you anger him enough, he'll flare his head and look like it's triangular shape. So that's not a reliable characteristic to go by. You don't want to get close enough to look at their pupil to see if it's elliptical or not. Maybe if you have a good zoom on the camera. So these are like, less practical ways. People talk about these all the time. Oh, just look at this size and the shape and what, But really the pattern is going to be the most helpful, and the range map. And this is another thing I don't suggest you do. If you look at the underside of the tail, kind of where they go to the bathroom, they call it their vent or cloaca. From there down, if you look at the scales, on a venomous snake, you'll have a single row of scales. There's the vent, that heavier line, and it continues to be a single row of belly scales down there. So this is helpful if you have a snake skin. A non-venomous snake like this guy, except for coral snakes, they're a different type. After the vent, their scales divide into two, so it's kind of like a double row. So if you have a snake skin in your attic or your yard or wherever, that's a pretty cool way to tell if it's venomous or not. But otherwise, like I say, you don't want to be going by a lot of these typical characteristics. So thank you guys for your attention. I know I kept you longer than normal, but I will be around for questions. Anyone have any burning questions that could benefit the entire audience? Have I overwhelmed you? I know this is a lot of information, but it's something I'm excited about.
At one time I had an indigo snake.
Ah.
A big. My neighbor killed him with me a favor.
Oh.
I was upset. Is there any way that you could get somebody to bring some of those in, repopulated area?
Well, we do have captive breeding programs. They're very well regulated, and they're mostly just going to put them on protected lands, not on private property. And people ask that too about like king snakes, because they know that eastern king snakes will eat venomous snakes, and they want their venomous snakes gone. So like, can you just drop some of those in my yard? And it just doesn't work that way. The animals have more specific habitat requirements to that. If they're not there already, there's probably a reason why. So I wish we could, but we are trying to work the indigo snake population up. Those only live south of the fall line. So if you see a big glossy black snake up here, it's not a rat snake, it could be a black racer. So, but all of them are protected. So, and black racers, I know this is going to sound weird, but they have an unusually large eye. Like you're like, what's up with that snake's eye?
How do you determine if the extinction of a species is not a natural occurrence?
Oh, wow. I mean, it depends on what you call natural. Have we sped things up? Yeah, I mean,
Appear and disappear.
it's true. There are some natural ebb and flow of extinction, but it feels like a lot of the threats are induced by man. So the habitat loss, the fragmentation with the roads, the pesticides, some could argue climate change is caused by humans. And so those things we know are not natural, you know. A disease could be natural. For example, avian flu, you've maybe heard of that in the news. That is something that does naturally occur. It just kind of ebbs and flows. It affected our coastal population of bald eagles this past winter. They've already rebounded. And people were worried about their songbirds. Do I need to take my feeders down? It never really got to the songbirds, so that wasn't a problem. So some things are like diseases, and some, especially like that white nose syndrome that came from Europe, it's not supposed to be here. And that's the thing with invasive exotics of any kind, whether it's a disease or a plant or an animal or whatever. It's not that they're evil in and of themselves. It's more that it's more that it's in the wrong spot. So to picture that slide I had with all the machinery, cogs and wheels. That's a native ecosystem. Think of an invasive exotic as you took a stick and just jammed it in the middle of that. So the native species don't know what to do with that creature. They don't have natural defenses against it. They don't know if it's edible or part of the food chain or what. So they end up thriving. And that's not everything. There's plenty of plants out there that are not native that don't take over forest.
Is there anywhere that our government, prevent the introduction of unwanted species and plants from other countries?
They try, but it's not foolproof. I mean, if you think about, they have massive efforts at airports and shipping stations, shipping ports. But, we got in that non-native jarrow spider from a shipment of plants, and it only took one that, could reproduce. So I don't think they've made it down here yet, but it's this really huge spider that has a golden web, and it's similar to the golden silk spider that we have here in South Georgia. Those have actually worked their way up. But it's even bigger. It is pretty, so people are like, oh, don't bother the pretty little spider. They reproduce exponentially. So they came into Brazelton. My mother-in-law lives in Flowery Branch, and around Halloween, it looks like she decorated big time, because it is insane. And you can squash all you want, but the folks at UGA are like, well, they're here to stay. But I tell you what, they're not going to live in my yard. I know that. They haven't made it to Griffin yet, so I don't think they've made it here either. But yeah, there's just a lot. There's a lot, and it can be overwhelming to combat that. So just do what you can, even if your yard is a hot mess like mine is, and you're just like, I can't even start. Just pull one weed, plant one plant and just see where it goes. It can't hurt anything, that's for sure. So there's so much more to learn. I know I talked your heads off, but if you're still interested and want to continue learning, which obviously you guys do if you're here, then be sure to sign up for our e-newsletter. It's free. If you're bored with it, you can unsubscribe. We're on all the social media platforms. And I do have an e-news sign-up sheet over there on the clipboard on that table, along with some other literature and swag. We have wildlife license plate key rings. This is a big source of funding for us, are these wildlife license plates. Anyone have a monarch butterfly license plate or a bald eagle license plate? It's an extra $25 a year, and 20% of that goes towards the wildlife conservation section that I work for. So there's several different ways that you can help. And if you guys have any questions beyond tonight, I'm very approachable. I enjoy challenges. Feel free to reach out to me. That is one of my favorite little friends, that barred owl there. That was a live teaching aid I used. But anyway, yeah, feel free to reach out to me, email, phone call, whatever. I'm excited to help. So, thank you. Yeah.
The other microphone's not working, but I'm sure you can hear me. In lieu of a speaker honorarium, which we offer all of our speakers, Linda has chosen, the Coweta County Master Gardeners are proud to make a donation to the Georgia Wildlife Conservation Fund on her behalf.
Thank you. Thank you. Yay.
We're going to go through the door prizes real quick. Linda was gracious enough to bring several native plants. We have the Carolina wild petunia she mentioned.